Okay. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It's Robett. Welcome to Robett Live. Another episode. The bro, Keir, Dillon. How are you, mate?
Doing all right. Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me on here.
This kicked off because last week we were talking to Mace, and the first question I asked him, and I guess I'll ask the same with you, is what's it like to wake up in 2020 in September and in a different world, not be in New Zealand at the Burton Open with in California with fires and heat and craziness? Does it feel like a dream for you also?
Oh man, actually, the crazy thing is it's been so long since I've been in New Zealand, which I love it down there. It's always magical. I mean, that feels like the dream, right? The good dream. Like you said, in the mountains and just kind of worrying about like fun things. And yeah, I mean, it's I love it. That's why I even love these conversations. It's like flashbacks to all that, that the beauty of all of that. But yeah, I mean, the world's crazy right now, right? Like, it's everyone's definitely getting hit from all sides and all angles. But I think for me, going through the past kind of year and a half, which is a total train wreck, this almost feels like normal. It's got like cool, or like everyone's kind of like getting on the same level. So I don't know. I think it's I think like anything, the tunnel of transformation. Nobody wants to go through it, but it's I think it's actually very helpful, and that's kind of what we're going through as a world right now. So
what's that thing?
Grab the lessons.
Time goes undefeated, and one of the things I'm really interested about talking with crew, you're a little bit older than myself, but the transition of when you're in a world at a moment, and then after you're out of it, do you look back and were you aware that you were in a moment, or did you just feel like that was? I'm really intrigued in the headspace of how. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's different levels of the moment, right? Like even just so like the snowboarder interview just came out, like the Black issue, and doing that interview with Trevor Andrew, which was an awesome experience. Like diving back, his like one of his questions, like what were like the 3 defining moments of your career, and when you really boil it down to like a singular moment, kind of like for me, the World Superpipe Championship, I think it was like 2002 or something, where I did the McTwist and it was seen everywhere. In that moment, I had no idea, right? I was just trying to have fun, get some shots. Maybe I knew that I wasn't going to do well at the contest, and just make the best of a situation. That was like a life defining, right? Like I was going to get fired. I didn't get fired. I talk about it all in the interview, but it was so in that moment. No, I think as a snowboarder, you get to a point where, at least for me, you're making enough money. You realize you're sacrificing college and friendships and life and all these things, and you're like, okay, if I'm giving up all that, which that's fun too, I want to make the most of it. So I think you're present in knowing that this is a short opportunity. I'm going to get old. New kids are coming up. All those sorts of things. Let's grab it. But I think the real magic moments are the ones that when you're just fully locked into your sweet spot, your craft. You're like connected to your subconscious, meaning you're just flowing. I think that's the best recipe for those magical moments to happen. Like they always say, like the luck favors they're prepared, right? I think there's, I guess, the different levels is what I kind of say. So yes, kind of.
Does it when you felt yourself in the zone where it's the mega McTwist with the flipping big Sony headphones, the shirtless, whatever, like there's just these, I think you've, weirdly enough, certain people have had within snowboarding, like JP had the do-rag, you had that, Mark Frank had the no grab back one, Devin Walsh had the front one, like all that sort of stuff. Does it feel pretty rad knowing that those moments that you created have actually become not only part of folklore but actual snowboard world history for all legacy? Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I think, how do you say? I think I give a lot more respect to like I guess some other people's like Mark Frank's 180s were like 6 style, Trevor Andrews McTwist 6 style. Like I didn't always love my McTwist, but it was my expression of it. So I'm grateful for that for sure. I think kind of like those things, like it's weird, right? This balance where like when you're young, and I talk about this in the interview too, like when you're young, you're just like you're fighting and you're like your ego is, I don't know, ego is not the exact word, but like your confidence is so big because you're trying to like overcome so much and you're trying to show up and all these things. And I think then if you're blessed to have success or a long career in anything, I think humility comes in because you realize that like, whoa, A lot of people helped you get here. A lot of happenstances. A lot of like you realize the village behind you that creates that. And I guess for me, it's more like, yeah, I just feel blessed, right? On the front end, I'd be like, yeah, you know, like, but at the end, you're kind of like, wow, like I just feel very grateful for that opportunity and for it to be embraced, right? It could be the opposite.
Well, I think that what you touched on there with that moment, it's not that it's arrogance or confidence, but it feels like the apex where the timing meets with your talent to the industry at the time for the moment. You know, like I felt, and I've talked this a bunch with, you know, people in New Zealand, especially the impact of what Snowpark had was, it was the timing of where the sport was and the industry and the physical location and the people coming down. You know, I think you had an apex at that spot with your time and the talent and the movement. When you obviously you're, you know, East Coast kids, and then now you're living out in the West. When you first made that, were you always on Burton? What was that first jump up? Was that, what was the hook in there?
Yeah, so I well, my dad was a ski bum, grew up on the East Coast, like you said. I've been skiing since I was 4. I started snowboarding at 11, and that was right at the time when actually Joyride was like the dope company. And my friends had bought like the Filch, and it was like the sickest board. And then Burton Rep Rider the year before was like, it was like a moguls company too, just to date how old it was. He's like, yeah, you're pretty good or something. And I said something cocky back to him, but then he ended up giving me my first snowboard as a rep rider. And yeah, from that day I was with Burton and all their subsidiaries, and we kind of, you know, the bolt-on companies from there. But yeah, from a rep rider to the end.
One of the things I've been really intrigued with is legacy within brand. And apart from Terje and a few of them, I almost get disappointed sometimes years later when you see someone that was so iconic on a brand then rocking something totally different, and it feels like all that stuff's been disappeared. And I had this idea, and I was going to talk to, you know, Jeff or one of the crew about it, and just be like, okay, after I think there's certain characters, instead of just, you know, putting them out to pasture of like, your contract's up, see you later, piss off, wouldn't it be epic to have like the yearly like Hall of Fame like retirement party, and it has your video section of it from when you were 17 to 27 or 37, what it is, and it just celebrates you just going out on top like your way, and it shows like your whole thing, like this is your life of shredding. Because I don't feel, for my opinion anyway, when I look at like legends that I was sort of looking up to as a young buck, I know that they had such a huge impact on the world of snowboarding, but I don't feel that the transition end piece out of something that people are so care about, and they put their lives online, I don't feel a lot of the time the athlete and the talent are truly respected to the brand for how much they actually gave back to it. And I was just wondering of like, you know, how do they better acknowledge legends in a better way, to give them more legacy or acknowledgement around that as well. And that's something that I've been thinking a little bit lately as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think every athlete, right, that's kind of, even towards the end of your contract or the big contracts, like, we're going to be with you forever. And, you know, having run a company and had athletes and stuff, I think I tasted both. I think, yeah, in a perfect world, in a more mature industry, that'd be awesome, right? Like what they've done, you know, with Terry still being on there, or, you know, like same thing. Anytime I see Brush, you know, Jeff Brush, he was a legend for me, and it's kind of like he should still be getting free boards. He should still be getting some like respect. Like, he created the company. I think there's like, where do you draw the line of who actually, you know, impacted the industry? And I guess I have empathy for the companies that don't. But yes, it'd be awesome if more did. I think a lot of that comes back full circle to passionate people that create more of like Hall of Fames, or you know, hold up those torches while companies are out still trying to hit their goals, right? But yeah, it's, you know, and it happens a lot. I mean, even Trevor, I think he designed the board for another company, you know, and you're just like, dude, that should be Burton. But also a lot of times it doesn't always do well, right? A lot of times athletes we think we're better than we are, or we think we have more years than we are, or like, hey, our marketability isn't there, but the love is still there, and I still want to shred. Like, there's so much complexity to it, right? Where I'd love to just say it's all the company's fault, but I don't know. I think it's I don't know, even just reflection of the snowboarder stuff now. For a long time, I wasn't dipping into snowboarding, right? I had like lied to myself about how fun it was, and it's cool to be like, hey, I let myself down in not staying relevant in posting things or snowboarding and stuff. So I can't blame another company for that. I didn't put inside, you know, the work from my end either.
When when I was talking with Mace, we talked about the progression of these sort of transitions where I think it got to about 2000 and I don't know when Sean did the doubles at 2010 or 9, maybe at the winter games in New Zealand. It felt like that was a moment where half-pipe riding went from a Ross Powers 1080s with a little grab just towards the end to a Danny Davis 1080, which was grab, I guess, more the whole way, to then a double cork. There's kind of these things, and now obviously the rest of it. When you were competing at that time and then saw, because you're obviously up the mix, world champs, you're obviously down for New Zealand a bunch. How did you balance off you making the decision of if you wanted to go down that route to start trying the doubles and the rest of it as well? Like, what was your mental stuff happening internally of looking at the young bucks to looking at what was happening around you? How'd you navigate that mentally in terms of the strategy of how, because you still competed and crushed, but how'd you go through that?
Yeah, I think it's the struggle that every athlete, at least in action sports, goes through, right? It's such an innovative stage, right? And it's constantly being reinvented over and over and over. I think within that, there are these periods, these time periods, right? And I think that becomes the gates or the flags that you're aiming for. So like you said, whether it was the back-to-back 1080s, which you knew that if you had those, you could go up to most contests in podium. And if it was like, the open or something massive, like it'd come down to some other factors. But for me, it was always like, what do I need strategically to be able to have in my arsenal to pull out? And I think that's why Sean was always the best is if I showed up in an event and I was super lucky and I land all my tricks, then yeah, maybe I could win, like ultra lucky, or I do okay. But the chance of that happening were I had to bat 100, right? Where like Sean was like, okay, cool, I'm going to show up and I have to ride at 85. I have to give you a B grade run and I'm going to win, right? So it's like, but we all knew that, right? Like I knew that like my frontside spins were weak. Okay, but how do I architect my run around that? And then how in the summertime am I going to remedy that situation? And there's just like, there's so much muscle memory and bad habits, or not bad habits, but bad habits in a way of the sport changing, right? Like spinning flat compared to spinning on an axis compared to double. Like it's the movement of the body and unprogramming your mind, right? It's kind of like Tiger Woods when he had to reinvent his swing. And I think that's what Sean's such a genius at, is that he can spin one way and he can reinvent his body again to spin the new next level up. And then again, yeah, I mean, it was the most frustrating thing because as it got harder, you're like, okay, if I don't have tens, I'm not going to be, I'm not really like sit down, right? It's kind of like you milk it or sit down. So yeah,
you said that in one of the interviews. I remember you said, I think it was, this would have been 10 years ago. You said in an interview, I remember it. Yeah. If you don't have a double, sit down.
Yeah. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's kind of like and you can also like, when you're in the flow, I love it because, it's like when you're feeling it, you can exceed past your limits and you let the muscle memory take over and like, you're flowing and stuff. And sometimes you can improve in those moments, but a lot of times, and that's a contest, right? You click in, you get sucked into the energy. But a lot of times you show up to learn a double, like the wall's not right, you're not into an airbag. There's just so many factors to push it that next level. And then you have the self-preservation, right? Of like, cool, if I land this, my career could potentially take off. But if I fall, I could also I don't even like to think about those things, right? And I think that is the balance. I think that's where age really has that effect of when you're young, you don't really care. And then as you keep getting hurt, you're like, I do. And then now even being old, I'm 43, I'm so blessed with how good my body feels for what I put it through, right? And it's just like, I'd be bummed right now if my knees were completely done. It's just like those sorts of things when you're young, you kind of want to think about it, but you don't.
Yeah, the listening to your body, to what it can and can't do, the muscle memory of having done something so long, doing something one way specifically for so long to try and retrain that is super tricky. But then balanced up on the fact that now, I watch a YouTube clip of some 12-year-old doing flipping 1080s or some shit. You're like, what is going on? Even, when you watch like little skaters on the mega ramps and you're like, you're supposed to be at school. What are you doing, dude? Like, what's happening? When you were coming towards the ends of more of the competing stuff, you started to transition across into some MC work, a bit of presenting. I think you had a partnership with AMP, you did X Games. How did that come come about? Had you already, because obviously, you know, you can talk good shit, you understand the technical elements of what's going on. How did that sort of, was it part of the strategy to think about, hey, this is where I could kind of play next? Or was it just, you know, did you get injured once and you're like, stuff it, I'll jump on the mic? How did that, because you had a good run there for doing that stuff for a bit.
Oh, thanks. It, I think a lot of things that are, at least that for me, that I should do, a balance of both, right? So for instance, and actually what you said too about things lining up. So I was competing. I would say I'm programmed more of an introvert with, I can push into extrovert, right? So like my natural sense is not to, I'd say, host and be the guy, but I can like lean into it, and I love telling people stories. But for snowboarding, it was, I would get hurt, and this is the time of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or Fuel TV, or I feel like there was even one before that. It was kind of like, well, do you want to come, you know, interview some people? It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna go up to the pipe anyway. So it was a mixture of that, and then TV was just starting to come on where companies cared about it. So it was like, well, if you get 10 seconds of ABC or some other time, we're gonna pay you X amount, like an incentive, right? So I remember when I was doing my contract, we worked in where I had a TV incentive. So like the amount of time I was on TV was how much I got paid. So then it was like the balance, like, wait a second, Fuel TV is on all the time. Like, and there was no language to that because the network didn't really exist at that time. So it was like more opportunist of like, okay, well, you blew your knee out. You want to go like travel around and do events because you're actually gonna get paid more now in incentives than you would if you competed. And it was like this crazy, like I was up for this one hosting job, which if I would have got it, they would have had to pay me $6 million. Like that was like it was mind blowing of an incentive.
Sales gig.
No, it's like it, but it was like those situations where like you do something, like it's almost like, hey, you're gonna ask for a cover, and then by the way, you're doing daily covers, like because you have your own magazine, but it's somehow still allowed. So it was a mixture of that's what allowed me to focus on the craft of it. Like I drive up to LA every week and take lessons and do sort of stuff like that, and then X Games has a ton of teaching and programming to help and Sal. And so it was like initial was like, okay, this is acceptable and it's kind of fun. Let me really lean into it and see if I can like figure it out. So again, it's kind of like timing of things.
Yeah. Within that realm, did you, when you had to MC or host and we're looking at the half pipe, did you have tension against yourself that you weren't in there? Or was it totally cool to be watcher and be stoked? Or was this a bit inside be like, you piece of shit, I could have flipped and McTwist that better. Fuck, you know, like how was your tension internally that you couldn't talk to others about? Yeah. Because, how was that?
No, that's, you know, I left snowboarding, meaning it was 2010. It was time for the Olympics. I kind of wanted to do it again. I trained to be able to do it, but then the headphones had started taking over, and it's like I'm making money here. I believe in this. We can do something here. Plus, like I can't keep up anymore. Like I try to be pretty self-aware of like what's working, not working. What like who's coming up. I was traveling with all the Friends crew, you know. So it was a good segue over. I had already been doing TV stuff as well, so that was kind of another item that I felt good about. But it's funny though. I still have dreams where my career didn't end because of me wanting to. It was like, it's just like a negative vibe. It's weird. I'm always like, and I wake up, I'm like, wait a second. Kind of like going to school not dressed. You're kind of like, but I was dressed, right? Like, so yeah, I don't know. So when I'd watch it, it was all out of respect and admiration, and tricks were things I could never do, nor would I want to do in the sense of the risk factor. Yes, I'd love to feel that, but so no, there's never an animosity like that. And then even now, even further away, it's just like, you know, like knuckle hop, all this sort of stuff. You're like, what is going on? You know, so it's 100% just like, you guys are insane. I love it.
The Olympics, I remember, because I think there was 4 spots or 5 spots or whatever, but you missed out by 0.3.
Yeah, that was fun.
Like
that was what I wasn't happy about.
Yeah. So go there for a sec, because obviously, was it do you felt you deserved it? Do you felt you got robbed? You were ready for it? You just weren't as fully into it and committed? Like, where was the headspace at that during that couple of month period?
Yeah. Well, the headspace was totally jacked because I had always dreamed about going to the Olympics when my parents were divorced, but like I lived with my dad kind of like middle age. We watched the Olympics together. And I'd always had this like dream to go to the Olympics, but I'm like, 5'10" and have no athletic ability outside of like action sports, so that was never happening. But so then when the Olympics started coming around and stuff, it reseeded that idea. And then my dad had died 6 months before the Olympics, which I always kind of, wanted to go for him. Then when he's dead, I'm like, I want to go for you, Dad. I'm doing it for you. So that was like totally jacked my brain. But I think the way that I have peace with it is, he always said, he's like, it's a judge sport. So if you want to win, like you have to win by enough that the judges can't take it away from you. So in one regards, I want to go, I was in New Jersey. Someone from New Jersey actually beat me. So happily beat me by 0.3, blah, blah, blah. And I go down that dialogue, but it doesn't serve me because it's like, number one, I'm blaming someone, so I can't control it. And then number two, it's like, dude, it's a judge sport. Like, I have bias without knowing I have bias in everything in life. Why? So it doesn't really matter. I didn't win by enough of a margin to deserve to go. And I guess that's where I like to live, because it's like, that's more factual.
Yeah. What's the biggest regret you have from snowboarding?
I have lots, right? But I think,
is there something you could have done that you knew that you were kind of half-assing, or was there a moment that an opportunity you should have taken that you didn't?
No, actually, my regrets from snowboarding, very little to do with snowboarding. I mean, you only know what you know, right? So when I was exposed to eating healthy, I ate healthy. When I was exposed to working out, I started working out. When I always tried to like show up and do my best. Like, I think the only items would be like, I wish I would have actually just tried a double McTwist, because I'm sure I would have like landed, and I'm sure it would have been easy. And I thought about it a million times on trampolines, diving boards, everything. But then I'm also like, I could have also broke my neck, right? So that I try not to visit too much. I try now is I traveled over 1 million miles. I experienced so much, and if someone really asked me like, where have you been in Europe? I'm like, I can go like St. Moritz, because like I just don't remember, because I was so in the zone of like, next shoot, next contest, where we at, like it was so moving that my life is so slow now, but I get to experience the now moments, and they're rich and they're juicy and they're amazing, and they don't sound sexy if I tell you about them, but they're like, they're life-giving. Where I look back on my career and it sounds sexy and nice, but it's like, I don't remember any of it. It's just like, I mean, I do, but I don't know. I don't really like have these like when you talk to people that, go on like a ski vacation or something, and they're talking about these like stories, and you're like, that sounds so rad. And like, wait a second, I lived that for like 15 years. So that's the only regret. I wish I would have enjoyed the journey more.
Yeah. Cause I can imagine, it's literally that you're living out of a suitcase. You don't have coat hangers. You don't have a home address. It's just back to back to backs from here to here to comp to comp. You're in a washing machine of winter, and now if you had, one heliboard day for one day this year, you'd probably remember it better than most seasons potentially, because it's not a blur of haze. And I think sometimes too, it's not that you're not being present in the moment, but you're there for a goal, and there's so much in front of you that it's almost what's next, and mentally you're already at, and then I've got to go to this, open to that, and then I go boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that's interesting. So you've been present in the moment for those pieces. It's kind of cool though, because it shows that you're at probably a different stage now to experience more of those cooler things in life, or at least just be more present for those things that probably matter a bit more than you think.
Yeah, no, 100% that. And like you said, you're only worried about like, I need to get my back-to-back 10s. Didn't get this contest. Where am I going to be at next? You're like a mile away from Milan. You might go see it. Fuck Milan. Sorry for learning. I need to learn the 10s, right? Kind of like, so yeah, just figure out where your focus is.
What was the energy like within the Burton team that was riding pipe at the time compared to others? Like, there was obviously a Sean and the Friends thing. There was a Burton and others, and then there was a kind of it felt like anyway, there was are you a pipe guy or a slope guy started to sort of come through as people sort of started to split and go down these sort of tangents. How did you navigate the energy between talent and team?
Between talent and team? What do you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, like, your teammates with them, but at the same time you rip their face off and beat them. And then was it Friends versus the world? Was it Burton against them? Was it like, how did you feel how did that feel?
For me, I always I don't know, like I'm just a super competitive person, especially back then, but not like competitive enough to care to like have fun. So if we're gonna play Risk and we're gonna play for 4 hours, it's like life or death, like we're at the Olympics or something. But afterwards, it's like whatever, be pissed for like half an hour and cool. But I just like that energy and that vibe. And I think for snowboarding, I'm a big golfer as well. I just love that I'm competing against you, but if you have an epic run and yours is better than mine, you win. Like, you know, it's like it's I need to go learn new tricks. I need to perform better on the day. So we can compete against each other, but without you, there's no stage created. So I think even for like me with the boys or me with Sean or anything, like it was never me hating you for that. And I think when you're really in the flow of like a season or something, you can appreciate when someone is pushing you past where you would ever be pushed, right? That's just how I always looked at it. I think there was definitely beef in other cliques. I think there was, you know, I also friends with Sean and the French crew. Like I was 10 years older than all of them, and for Sean, he's just a mutant anyway. So it's like I never felt this like I need to be better than you. You know, it's like I already know you guys are gonna be better. That's how this works, right? Like, so I think my perspective on it was just different, and I think that's I guess everyone runs their own race, right?
Well, it was, and I was saying this to Mace, you know, in that whole crew in that world, it was, you know, you were you were big bro, you know, it wasn't people were like trying to come against you or whatever. So how'd you navigate the energy between all being on burden, but then there being the Sean thing and being the not Sean thing? How
that was horrible. That was horrible because Sean and I used to be like really, really good friends, right? Like, I mean, he was super cool to me, like and my daughter and like everything. I mean, like we're both old timers, even though he's not old. So like, yeah, that was both awkward and also just a bummer, right? Like I get it on both sides, but it's kind of like I guess
you're stuck in the middle, kind of. But then commercially, there was a different hit you wear because I remember the I think it was one of the Burden Open after things is me, you, Sean, a whole bunch of the crew that went out was all the Burden boys. But there was just a very distinct split of crew that were hanging. And I'd heard all the shit, blah, blah. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, aren't you all on the same team?
Yeah,
I felt empathy for you, kind of feeling like you're stuck in the middle a little bit on that one. But big bro, but care, but commerce, it's tough.
Yeah, I think it's like anything where there's drama within crews or within, you know, boil it down to high school or anything, right? And you get sucked into like, wait a second, a couple gets divorced and now you can't hang out. It's like, no, you can't hang out because I hate that person, whatever, right? I think it's part of a lot of programming. The thing I like in hindsight, and probably part of it was I grew up straight edge till I was 21, and which was cool because I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't do anything. But in hindsight, like those kids, which I owe a lot to, they helped me with so much. But they would go to parties and slip people's tires and stuff for drinking, right? It's like, dude, they're having a beer. Straight edge is cool when it's yourself for me, but like when you're then affecting other people in a super hostile way because their choice to like want to get like have drugs or drink, I think that's just where it can go bad. And I think the same thing even with like when you look at like Friends crew and Sean, it's like there's so much good, but then if we leverage the good in a way that's not really honoring the good, that doesn't equal. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like
good with I was gonna say, is it all good now with the Friends crew and Sean? Is everyone just like grown up and moved on, or is there still just like tingles of? Because I guess there's the comments for what happened with Friends, but then
yeah, well, I get
that it's inception to the end.
I mean, I can only speak to Friends because I'm not in the industry enough to know how their relationship is. I would imagine that they pushed by it. Who knows, right? I think as you get older, kind of we talked about earlier, your perspective and appreciation for things changes. I don't know. But as far as like, you know, for me with Friends, I mean, the only people that I speak with, sadly, you know, Daniel sent a text once in a while, and Mace, right? Like Mace and I both, we've had gnarly journeys into drugs, into rehab, into like all sorts of chaos, which I think when you get your ass beat, like it helps humble you or helps you appreciate again the joys, like not like I would spit down like no friend, no nothing, I lost everything. Like you start to appreciate things a little more, right? You also then appreciate, I think, people that are in those spots that come back and you're like, that's not guaranteed. You think being a pro is hard. Coming back from some of those areas is gnarly. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough, right?
His speaking to Mace, I had known a little bit about it from the outside, but you know, he got into the weeds of, you know, from essentially Olympian to homeless drug addict, living in a car, 6-month rehab, whole first kick off, and now he's in the barber world, you know, shaping his thing up. And he said the number one thing he missed was that camaraderie of friendship within it. And it was it was really interesting of a commercial business built around friendship and having someone's back, but then feeling so alone not to really have the thing that you actually probably needed at that time.
Yeah.
It's ironic, right? Because then it's real world shit.
Yeah, totally. Right. Like, I mean, it's mind blowing to me. Like, I'll own all the stuff that I did to the French crew, or what they think that I did, or any of that sort of stuff. 100%. Were there moves that were made? Yes. But and I've never, and I struggle with it now, and this was a huge lesson, but I also was never at a time period in my life where, like, you call someone you know and they refuse to answer. Like, I've talked to a bunch of people since then, and like, they're like, no, dude, that's just how it is. And I'm like, okay, well, I just never, up until a couple of years ago, if I know someone, or if someone knows me, if I don't see your message, I can't reply. But like, if I see it, even us, like, hey, like, you want to, like, cool, love it, right? Like, I just never experienced that where someone goes, we don't talk anymore. Ever.
Yeah.
You know, it's gnarly to me. And
Black
whatever.
book.
What?
Black book.
Yeah, just like you're not even gonna give me, like, even like the humor text, like thumbs up, like nothing. And to me, it's just, I don't know. It's like I said, I never experienced it, and it's not something I would ever want to do to someone. I would rather just be like, hey, this is why I can't talk to you. Either it's about you or it's just me. Usually it has to be us, but I would always just try to give someone the common courtesy. But I'm sure I don't talk to tons of people that say I'm doing the same thing to them. Who knows, right? Like, I also try to be very aware of that. But yeah, trust me, it's a head trip. I think when you're CEO, you raise a ton of money and then you lose the people's money that you invested, and you do everything in your power. Like, I mean, I invested $1 million of my own money. I lost my house, my family, everything, trying to fight for it. And there's ego in there as well. But it's still like this, to be like done. It's just crazy to me.
How did was the biggest mistake? What was the biggest mistake with the Friends crew? Was it you didn't have an inner circle of, like, commercial executioners that have done that stuff in the past? Was it naivety from the young bucks, just trusting the big brother? Like, what was the hook? Like, if you were to unpick the whole thing, where was
mine's going to be skewed, right? So, meaning, one, I think we started a company with 10 owners. Like, it's at that age. Like, I mean, I just got divorced 3 years ago, and when I talk to my ex-wife, who I love, and she's amazing, but we are so different, and we were together for 17 years, and it's like, I'm like looking at it like, holy cow, we don't believe anything the same. So when you start a company of 10 people at that age, it's going to get pulled at many levels. I think that's probably the most fundamental one, right? Like, now through my lens, meaning like, okay, yes, we launched into headphone space. It was Skull Candy, and Sony had a headphone company, and Beats, and like endless. And I pivoted to women, and then we go down that route of, hey, our opening orders were $2 million from Apple and Best Buy, all North America. Like, that's not a bad move from a reason to want to differentiate and innovate in a category that's also exploding, but also then very competitive. I think fundamentally, like I said, emotionally, I think it was that we pivoted, because it's kind of like, dude, you just did a company and it's not just sports, and now you're going into women's fashion. Yeah, I'll own that. I was also trying to raise money to do things, and nobody wanted to compete against Skull Candy and Beats by Dre in the same category with no money, and they have gnarly influencers, and it just didn't make sense. I don't think there's a single headphone company around that was in the action sports space like today. Although the industry imploded. I think from a business perspective, as a business person, then running that was, we exposed, one, it's the business model of headphones is gnarly. You have about 6 months from PO to collecting on the POs. From like PO, development time, shipping time, ship it in, get paid on net 60, net 30. The biggest one was the contract we signed with Apple was a terms deal. So consignment, So yes, we got $2 million POs. Yes, they prepaid us $500,000, but I wasn't that close to the contracts to realize that if it doesn't sell, we don't get paid. So now we're out $2 million worth of inventory that if we don't flip it, we're still burning cash against that, which that creates a whole bunch of debt. And then we're out there raising on a beat up balance sheet trying to figure it out. So I think that was the one great opportunity of getting an Apple and Best Buy. But I think like a lot of companies that they crush, the lack of turning because we just launched as a women's headphone company. We had no press before that moment. And the industry wasn't there yet. We were ahead of our time. I was still convincing people that you'd wear headphones with your iPhone if you're a woman. So
yeah, yeah, no, totally. But when I was talking to a friend about it after the Mace interview, and I was thinking, surely the play would have been some type of simple licensing deal with someone with the back-end infrastructure to go and execute against all that sort of shit, right? So you guys can just stay creative at the front end, help with the design, tick some boxes, do some cool shit, help with the brand, and then get the big dogs to run it. Was that ever brought up as an option to partner with someone else to do it on your behalf, and you just play with the marketing and the creative side? Was that an option?
Yeah, 100%. We went to a company. We started a deal. They went and trademarked the name out from under us, which we ended up fighting for 2 years back. And we were like, you know what? I think we need to do this ourselves, right? But that's like the play, right? I was aware enough. We don't want to go do this, but when you try to partner with someone and then they basically roll you over the coals beyond,
we can
do this. And we had the president of Burton Snowboards from previous. As the chairman of our board, we had a gnarly board of advisors, board of directors. Like we were doing everything that you could possibly do right. There were just definitely some other items that came into play that made it very hard to succeed.
How was the weight of you being a CEO with friends that were close to you who were also genuine friends, but that as investors, because when you're young, you don't know what's up with money. But then also when you're in commerce, you've got friendships and, money and friends, a lot of times don't mix. How did you balance being a CEO, navigating personal and professional relationships with the exact same person?
Well, I think like anything, when it's working, it's easy, right? When it's not working, then it becomes difficult, whether it's just ultra pros or not, right? Like we had 2 billionaires as investors. We had people that had a lot of money. We had people that had decent money, right? They're all accredited investors, which now I see like, hey, if someone's gonna lose some money, it's nice to like, they have a certain wealth if they're gonna lose 50 grand, right? So it's like, yes, it hurts, but they have a certain wealth, right? I think I tried to do the best that I could, knowing that I had great people like saying like, you gotta do investor updates, you gotta keep stuff tight, all these sorts of things. I think like anything, you can nitpick it to death. I think the one item that comes to play the most, and I see it even in the company that I'm trying to help now because they're in a little bit of a shaky situation, which is why I came in to try to help them. Like, hey, I've been here. Here's the bombs. When it's you have other people talking in their ear, right? So it's like, oh, what do you mean? Like, what did they do? This, that, whatever it is, and it's kind of like, and they're just trying to help too. I'm not saying people are malicious, but it's the whole story, understanding how things actually play out, what are the actual goals. And yeah, it sucks. I mean, and I think for me, it double sucks. I'm like, dude, than any athlete, I had 10 times more money in it. So it wasn't like, hey, put some money in, I'm not going to. Like, I put in 10 times the amount of money than you did. Like, so clearly I believed in it. But it sucks. I mean, losing anyone money. You go to the movies and you lose money, or like someone's ungrateful for certain things, and it's kind of annoying. So I get it. Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, I'm helping this company and I'm getting ready to launch another wellness company, but it's totally different, right? Like, yeah, I'm glad that most of the people, everything. I mean, on this topic of just, I learned the value of money because I was living at my brother's house a year ago on his garage floor with my car was all I had for $4,000 and some stuff in it. Like I had 5 homes, MTV cribs, like, and I lost everything through lawsuits or everything. So I think now going like, and then I was like doing like literally driving doors.
5 homes?
What? Yeah.
You had far.
Then I was driving DoorDash, like delivering food to just make like $3 here, $10 there, whatever. So I think that gave me real perspective of money. Like I would always work hard when I was younger, but then when you start making money, you just kind of forget. Like, and then you get into the manifestation. Like I think it happens because you have like a team around you, you have influence, and it's just you forget that that's not everyone. And I always say to people, like, dude, just do it. Like, what are you waiting for? And I still try to tell myself that of like, but it's like a river that you get in, and if you can lock into that feeling of flow and understanding how certain things like laws of the universe work, you can leverage it. I've tasted it, so I get it, but I also now understand how hard it is to get back there. So yes, I would do it. I am in the process of doing it, but taking other people's money, number one, I'm very scared to do that. Right? It's kind of like, let me build it in first, prove it. Just a lot more of that sort of stuff. Like I don't ever want to lose someone's money. And if I do, I just want it to be handled way better. And I still thought I did a really good job.
I remember, I don't know if you remember this, we're in CES maybe 2 years ago maybe, and we passed really briefly in the middle of a thing. I was like, yo, what's up, man? He's like, how's things? And I was like, how's it going? And you were like, not good at all. And I was like, oh, hi, bro. I'll talk to you soon. And I was like, and I had no idea about any of the shit that was going on, but you were just like totally up front. You said what up and then bailed. And I was like, what's happened? Oh shit, there's some shit's going on. So what happened?
At what level? I mean, it was like, Friends is just a mind bender. Like, not to get into the weeds of it, but like the Scotty stuff was just mind blowing to me, right? Like the narrative
so
behind
like
that.
50, yeah.
It's like, and I just all the text messages, everything I have it, but none of it really matters, right? Once someone says something, it's done. It's still never even like talking to them, like we won't connect. So just be like, wow, like the narrative changed that much from my lens. Then my partner and I out with each other, and still like, I've never been able to talk to him since. Like this again, these walls, right? We're like, like can't you at least just yell at me and tell me what you think? Kind of like these situations. And then through that was towards the end, we'd stabilized the company. We were a team of 3. And then we had a line of credit out from a bank that basically the investors were just tired of, and they let it go. But through that was just, I got sued by Nordstrom. They were trying to sue me for 8 counts of fraud for something that was a company that I purchased later that I wasn't even the owner of when it went down, but still it's court. You got to pay to tell your story. So yeah, I lost my house, stressed my wife, got divorced, lost everything. I mean, that's just 2016. And then on top of that, right, it's all the other emotional stuff. Like it's friends, you're in this vortex of focusing hyper on this thing. When it implodes and you have literally nothing because you haven't talked to any other humans, so you have no friends. It was just, and then I'd already been doing drugs.
So ironic.
What?
It's so ironic. The name of the brand is the one thing. It's similar to Mace in many regards. The one thing that was built for each other, no one's actually there for you to even have a conversation.
Yeah, it's.
And so, and then it went to the drugs after that.
So I was straight until I was 21, and then at 21, I was going to New York City listening to like trance music because it wasn't called EDM back then. And I started doing ecstasy, GHB, then ecstasy, and I'd done that for 20 years, something like that. Not, I guess 19. But like I liked it because it wasn't available. It was like there's certain built-in like helpers to not push it over the edge. And also I believe that there's an element of whether it's plant medicine or drugs, there's an element of done in the right manner can open up your mind. Like I believe there's good that can be achieved through it. Now, granted, I also believe that I believe that it helped me in some ways and also destroyed me, right? Or I allowed it to destroy me. But towards the end, and when everything you've ever worked for is crumbling around you, and you have no friends, and you have no support, and all sorts of things, you basically just want to run away, cry, kill yourself. Like when I look back, it's like I wasn't saying to myself I want to kill myself, but I did not want to be on Earth, right? And it's gnarly. You're like, and then as humans, we're patterns. So it's like Like whether it's like my wife and I lived together after we were like split up as we were selling the house from the lawsuit. It's like I already know that if I want to go do something, I just like say 3 words, get a fight, I'm out the door, now I can go do what I want. Right? It's like that whole insane asylum. But it's like that you can control, right? There's like, I think there's an element of control in there when everything else is spinning around. It's like, well, I know I can go do drugs here and do this and that, right? It's like, and I think the profile.
You can do what you can control. It's how you can get to that space. Yeah, I get it.
And I think the profile, right? Like usually athletes like gambling, usually athletes like certain things. Like there's built-in elements that are helpful, but like anything, there's also built-in elements to those helpful things that are destructive.
Yeah, the headspace of drive and determination and stubbornness gives so much asset while you've got the talent to execute within a specific lane, but those same attributes that got you to that spot without that talent and out in the wild can go south pretty quick.
Well said. That's all. That's literally all of it, right? You're so spot on. And then the worst part is like you're saying that then if you're blessed, I believe, to come full circle to realize, hey, ego and all these other things and stubbornness, yes, what you said, when you have this setup, they can work. But when you don't, dude, those are really bad qualities. Like, and you can't repeat that, right? Like
and it's balance. Yeah, and balancing those relationships of been married together for a partner for 17 years, and then it being kind of snow care, and then coming out of it to business care. It was the intersection of frustration for all those relationships was the fact that you jumped into commerce essentially, and then that's what brought all the rest of it. Was that that's the transition point instead of going into the sunset and getting a coaching gig up at Mammoth and still shredding around whatever, was it the jumping into a totally different world which changed the dynamics and the energy and the attitude of the relationship? Was that kind of the plus? I'm guessing logistically you were probably home a lot more too, right? But how'd you balance that?
For friends, we had an office in Carlsbad, Encinitas, and New York City. So I was bi-coastal, 2 weeks in each month. Still traveling a bunch for that. I don't know. Like, I guess, I don't know if you've ever seen the Rob Dyrdek Impact Theory interview, but it's always resonated with me because it's for someone to share what they believe that I should do is always a tough one, right? It's kind of like, cool. So like you're an athlete, then you become a coach, then you do this. It's kind of like, in hindsight, when I look at JJ, I'm like, shit, that would have been a good decision. But that's not me, right? Like to me, I love snowboarding. It's the vehicle that taught me everything and belief and friendship. But I look at that as it was still a vehicle, meaning I love friends in that way. Taught me a ton, got to express myself. I got to birth new ideas into it, whether it's a trick or an idea or a design language or whatever it is. Got to grow, got to suck, got to learn. It created a stage. So I like, if those are cars, I like driving. I think now I'm going to drive a little bit, with maybe a seatbelt on, but but I'm not going to go park and just like clean my interior.
Have you approached? Do you have a new partner now?
For the new one.
Yeah, no, I'm saying so your relationship with a partner, has your relationship with your new partner outside of not your ex-wife, have you approached your relationship differently with how you approach it?
You mean like dating partner?
Yeah.
Is that sorry? Yes, yeah. I have a girlfriend now. And it's totally different. I met my girlfriend, my ex, when I was 24, which I've always felt like a late bloomer. I was probably the mental, awareness and everything of like a 16-year-old. So, everything's different, right? Like just the communication, openness, owning your crap, like so many things. When I think back to my ex, I'm like, fuck, like there's a million things that I would have done better to honor her, to have created a better relationship, like so many things. So yes, being very aware of like what didn't work and walking through again those tunnels of transformation to own stuff and to just to be open about everything. I think also if you've had a relationship for that long and then it doesn't work, you understand how damaging it is to everyone, right? So never want to put another human through that again, including myself.
Yeah,
so yeah.
It's the transition down. It's almost the rebuild phase. So where, if there was a leadership lesson for yourself for going round 2 to build Friends 2.0, what would you do? What's the one thing that you'd structure differently to take on the next venture? Team, strategy, output?
Well, like, I don't know, like, I some of the employees from Friday, I still talk to it in especially when in dark times when you think you're a total loser, and they're like, no, these are the things that you're actually really good at, right? So I love sucking the best out of people. I love creating energy of people, not like creating energy of like how people can believe in the impossible, and like that feeling of that when you burst something and then like, it starts to work, and just like what it takes to get people there. Oh, did I lose you?
No, you're there.
Okay. And then just like so that part, I just love working with humans, and I think from and knowing that you have their back, right, and are there for them, which I felt like I always done. I think areas of the right people, right, and the right people in the right seats. I was blessed. We had an epic team of like straight ninjas. I really now get to see how good they are, or how good they were or are. I was way more ego driven. Like I wanted to be the man. I wanted to like make this work. Not understanding that like our zone of genius can be in certain areas. Like hey, you can be the guy that bursts an idea, but there's other people that can create the proper systems and really scale it. So I think a lot of that sort of stuff of just not getting, I don't know, like someone gave me someone was like, you start a business that can run on itself and then you can make money in the grand scheme of things. And I was just the guy that I worked myself into a really cool job. I wasn't trying to make friends where it could function without me. I was trying to create this massive company and sell it and make money, whatever it was, but I wasn't building an engine, right? Like we were doing.
It's a difference. It's scaling in the engine to be a true business that can actually function without you. But the majority of the time, the solopreneurs or whatever, and I've been there, plenty of times myself, is it feels like you have to do it or you don't feel like you're actually working, where there's nothing wrong at all with the creation, the curation, the ideation, the building, and then actually just the delegation to oversight to then just puppet string at the top at board level. It's tough when you're passionate about it, but you need to like separate out for it, so that's that's great learnings for the next one, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think all painful things create the perfect opportunity to learn if you're just even remotely looking, because if you're not remotely looking, you're going to learn it again. But yeah, what you said.
If you were to rewind through Snowboard World, and when you look at the impact that I guess the burden and the support, Jake Burden was a huge part of it. And I want to touch on just for a second of, it always felt like he was playing a different game to everyone. I remember on the come up, there were so many people that I clearly remember actually 2006, before I went to change to Burden in 2007, a bunch of people like, Burden sell up, blah, 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 all the rest of it. I remember sitting down with Guy Alty in New Zealand. I sat in his office and he said, he goes, trying to get me across, whatever. And he specifically goes, so these guys calling you sellout and stuff potentially for going. I'm like, yeah, hard out. I was like, okay, cool. He goes, oh, well, who owns Burton? I'm like, oh, Jake. And how many times does he snowboard a year? I'm like, 100. Okay. And then who owns, let's say, argument brand X is like, shareholders. Oh, actually surfers. Oh, actually blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, so you're telling me that they're giving you shit for a brand that they ride for is actually owned by shareholders in suits in New York on Wall Street that have never actually snowboarded before, that own soy sauce companies and, all sorts of other shit. And they're giving you shit for calling you a sellout because you're wanting to partner with someone whose owner isn't publicly, is privately owned. He snowboards 100 days a year and does everything back to the sport. And I'd never thought of that. And then as I've got, and I was, this is years ago, but as I've got older, I always felt that there was, he got given so much extra shit for being almost the monopoly in a world where if it wasn't for him, there would be no game. and with where he was playing, just felt so disconnected. And it wasn't until I had one of my a mentor in New Zealand, he talked about, just stop squabbling over this fish and chip bullshit. And he said as a passing line, but I've always remembered how he talked about there's a game that's actually being played at a macro, and there's fish and chip, small niggly bullshit at the bottom, which people are fighting over with specs at the bottom. And I just wanted your take on seeing Jake Burden and the brand and business of what Burden did, you being so close to him. Was that the truth, that he was just playing a totally different game to others? How did you feel with Jake and Burden, with what he was actually doing for the sport of snowboarding?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm biased, right?
He bought you 5 houses, I'm sure.
Exactly. But I think back to this, I'm a gnarly competitive person, and I think, and I talk about this in depth in that new interview. But he was on such another level of just, like, as an example, depending on how I was raised, most people wouldn't lose 5 homes. You'd have proper, like, corporations protecting you, right? Like, I got popped with, like, commingling of funds was the real reason that if I fought it, it would have been really hard to win, even though it was total BS. But, like, there was, like, I just didn't have things set up, right? Like, people that, like, come from money or, like, have proper, like, they're indoctrinated on another level, right? It's kind of like Trump. Like, you get that many lawsuits, no big deal. You get that many bankruptcies, no big deal. You're set up, you're insulated against it. So I think when I think of him, like, he came from, or however he got it, but he had that sort of knowledge of, like, real, like, moving figures around. He was extremely competitive. I mean, you want to talk about, like, you're on a golf course and thinking that you might not get, like, a new contract because he's that pissed if you beat him, which I'm not going to lose on purpose. So, but that was what was fun. Then he wouldn't, like, hold against you. But, like, that's his level of just, like, he was just ruthless. I think a lot of people on the inner circle would say, like, did he enjoy life? And, like, that's not the question here. It's just, like, that's, like, that was his spirit, right? So I think to be the best, to be at the top, like, Shaun White's gnarly like that too. Like, it just, you have to have, I think, a certain level to crush like that. Whether you paint that picture to the world or whether you don't, I think it's still in there as a spirit to hold the best, to hold 50% of the market for that many years. With that, he also, for me, he taught me how to dream. He would like fly us to Celtics game, not just to show off, but was like, dude, this is possible. Like, him telling stories about running ads to ski magazines and them saying, like, hold your money, this is stupid, we don't want your money. And he's like, no, like, it's for him to have a dream and to turn it into that. It's like, hey, like, focus, this is real. Like, I'm not special. Like, all those sorts of things. And, like, being exposed to all the things that he exposed us to, or me to, was just like, whoa, like, this is next level. Which he didn't have to, right? So I think his love of life, of sport, of game, yes, came out and maybe gnarly in certain things, even with snowboarding, like complete dominance. Like, I want to be the best. Like, it's like, okay, well, so I don't know. I guess when people say sell out stuff, again, I'm biased. I just think, yeah, he wanted to be the best. He wanted to dominate, and he did that. I don't know. In hindsight,
thinking.
What?
Like, did he share his thinking commercially with how he approached sport and business and mixing passion with it?
No, but why would he? Right? It's. Yeah. I think his passion or his ideology showed up in the way that it worked to me. Like, it's kind of like, because I think you have to have that for that. But, like, why would like, just, I don't think Shaun shows his gnarly competitive nature. Like, he's telling people that, like, he wants to kill him over a risk game. Like, why would you? Right? It's kind of assumed in a way, right? But I think what he did for the sport and all that was always snowboard focused. How do we grow this? How do we make it amazing? How do we allow new people to be exposed to this great gift? And that I was indoctrinated with as well. Like, whether it's something I fully understood or not, he did just want to expose more people to this amazing blessing of expression that was snowboarding.
Yeah, and there's not many business owners that would do as much as he did for it. I just always remember that chat, the way he talked about it, just gave me a different perspective on balancing passion with profit. it's extremely difficult to do it at such a high level. But then there's obviously exactly to your point, there's the way to be indoctrinated with the way that money works and things actually happen to the outside world. I think so many people didn't realize the game he was actually playing. I think it feels like he was just definitely on another level with the way he was sort of navigating, and weirdly enough, a fortress against, to keep himself safe, but to also help the sport too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd probably be almost, I'd be probably biased too, because, I jumped the team, especially for that in 2007. So I was on a similar thing, but I got to, meet him, see what's happened to the world of snowboarding. And, now when you look at all of it, and you think, you've got, Olympic medalists that don't even have sponsors at the bottom of their boards. And there's a whole bunch of, like a wipeout and decimation of commerce within the action sports industry, even though it's being consumed more and more than ever and people want to do it. There's clearly a disconnect between it. So, it was figures like that who actually helped the sport a lot. So, I was interested to touch on that for a bit, because it was very, I think, you got to be close to, someone in the snowboard world who's, the godfather that helped a bunch of it. So it's cool. You got a bunch of learnings from it as well. And it's good to know he was as competitive as everyone else thought he was.
And loving. I remember like negotiating my deal that I literally thought I was going to leave. And he was just like, hey, you know where the keys are to my house, and the keys to the BMW are in the garage. And, I went down there for a week and just we were hating each other. He didn't have to be like, I understand how this turned out. You got to do what you got to do for you. And by the way, I'm still going to be normal to you. I think that was to me, that was a huge sign of just okay, yes, obviously he wants to win, but he values other things too.
Well, who are you going to go to? K2?
Oh, no, it was, I forget. Chris Engelsman ended up going to it. It would have been a bad move, but the money was, no, maybe, was it? Maybe.
Don't know.
I
good money though?
It was good money, which, I come from nothing, so money was appreciated.
What's your heritage? Where's your DNA from?
Half white, half black. The black only goes to slaves, and then the white is Pennsylvania Dutch and German, which is pretty much German.
Huh.
Yeah.
Got ya. Very cool. When I was growing up in snowboarding in New Zealand, I was probably one of the only sort of genetically tanned humans in the ecosystem at the time. Was it the same for you? In your world, would have been, right?
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I was like the new snowboarder issue. It was all that sort of stuff. But I it's funny because I didn't.
Did you see it or know it? I knew it.
I saw it. I never the only place I really felt it was in Norway. When I go to Norway, and I guess the team manager had said that's because there was a lot of East Indians moving in, and I looked very East Indian, and I guess there's a lot of hostility towards that. I felt it gnarly, and I dated an Indian girl when I met her. When my dad met her parents, the dad looks within the first minutes like, my daughter will never date or marry a nigger. And my dad, I was like, that didn't go well. It was the most awkward half an hour. We'd both driven pretty long to get there. I was like, oh my God. But outside of that, and then subtleties, you're in Europe, but I don't know. I guess I didn't really care. It was, and I think, and it's and I was talking to Trevor about this. Snowboarding created this landscape where it's if you don't like me because of your color of my skin, then cool. That's something for you to triple, and I'm not tripping on it. But we're gonna go battle tomorrow, and if you get beat by somebody that you think you're better because you have superiority, because you think you're better, even more funny. But I don't know. I just didn't. I never tripped on it, and I also I've never been in my life. So if someone was said something, I'd be like, okay, cool. I don't know. I have a strong ego, but it's not in that realm. Need to be the man, and not
it wasn't 2020 woke culture and shit, but within the pro snowboard world, it was essentially you ran the pipe stuff for anyone that wasn't essentially white or Asian. And then when Forum did its thing, then Stevie Bell rolled along. But apart from that, it's been very scattered and dispersed. And in New Zealand, one of my good bros that I grew up with, buddy Leroy Christensen, so he's a young Māori kid as well, the Māori sort of the cultural sort of native people in New Zealand. And I remember in 2003, we were snowboarding up at Tahoe, and up in Ruapehu, and we said, man, there's like none of the bros, like, and we never really realized that there weren't many Māoris that snowboarded. So we started this crew called MWB, and we ended up getting like stickers and shit put on our board. And it was MWB was like Māoris and white boys, and the whole thing was like, well, me and Leroy are the only like brown crew that are rolling, and it's just going to be our little homies. But it was kind of humorous, but at the same time, yeah, I wondered from someone obviously at a global elite level, did you, because you weren't tripping on it, you probably weren't too phased about it, right? But clearly it was a thing. Yeah, I was just wondered if you ever felt that was a thing.
No, just literally only in Europe, only in Norway. And then the super nuanced stuff that, like, when you sit down at the airport and someone grabs their purse and you're kind of just like really? Like, but like, I don't know.
I got 5 houses, son.
I would have fit for my velour suit anyway.
So where to now for you? You've had a crazy run. You've, gone from World Superpipe champ to, in your buddy's basement, relationships won, lost, money won, lost, reset, humility, grown to this next sort of phase, not in the world that you were in. Like, when you wake up now in 2020, where's your head at?
Yeah. I guess in a massive amount, one, it slips in of like, dude, you lost a lot of money. So I'm not delusional about that. Like, it's painful. But with that, there's a ton of gratitude. There's like, one, just, I don't know, it's scary to even say, but like, when you get to far enough down, like, your chances of getting back, like, it's gnarly. Like, it just is. Like, I am so grateful that I was able to get off my meds because I was in Texas and I couldn't get any, and that created a shift in my brain because I could actually like think or not think for a couple months. It was, like, I was hooked on gnarly drugs on top of what we discussed, and to get off of that, and just to have the ability to have a full loop, and and that's what I was going to share with others was like, I tasted what it tastes like to think an idea and create it, whether it's snowboarding, whether it's friends. I when people talk about manifestation and like birthing this, it's kind of like, it's still a little hard for me, but like, I've done it. Like, I've lived a few of them to be like, no, it works. And it's still hard to do it. So I think for me, as I press forward, is I want to help champion people, that you can do anything, right? And to share openly, where I fell into bomb holes and stupid decisions. For my family, I wasn't there. Like, I'm now developing a relationship with my son that's been amazing, and just being like, dude, like, you need a dad. Like how many people are messed up in life because they don't have a dad, right? I even did all this personal development stuff and got certified, and I know that that's like the number one cause, right? So it's like to go through all that and then not be a good dad, it'd be like a second reboot chance, and same thing with my daughter. Like, she's not talking to me, so having to walk those stages, and just getting more focused on things that matter, and then the things that I create, wanting to create them in more of like a community, a wellness, a support, and just helping other broken people. Like, I've always been an underdog, love the underdogs, want to, I think there's a lot of good energy in there, if positioned right. And yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I wonder about the, so certain types of characteristics I've seen with people. One is, gnarly CEOs, SAS, military, and elite action sports athletes. And it's a headspace of knowing that they've been to places that no one else has ever been to. I was saying to Mace, people can explain as much as about what it's like going to war, blah, 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 but you'll never know what it's like to actually be in their shoes, to actually go and do it. No one will know what it's like to strap up, flip, and go for from 20-foot McTwist out of whatever, bombing straight into try and front 10 out of it off your toe, so blah, blah. No one knows, right? Except you to get to a point. And then when you see the glory and the MTV cribs and the houses and the travel and the party and the world and all the rest of it, would you rather have tasted and seen it all and be back at square one, or never have done it to know what it was actually like?
Well, the first for sure. But I think the statement that a friend said to me is like, the only thing worse than being broke is people thinking you have money and being broke. 100%. But I think for me, because it's my journey in life, like tasting it is 90% of it. Like if you believe in God and you had to have a death experience where you crossed over and you saw him, you're set, right? You don't have doubt, you're there. So even for me, like even in the struggle of day one, if I think back, it's like, dude, you did it when you were 16 and 30. It's like, you've tasted it, you know what it tastes like, you know it's all frameworks. Like the whole reason why Tony Robbins stuff works is because as humans, we're pretty much programmed computers. So like rinse and repeat some stuff. So that belief is everything. The confidence can be built on the belief. So I think, yeah, I would way rather reset and have another bad at it than never actually like show up and be able to like live that aspect of it. It's hard though, right? It's hard when you're driving around DoorDash delivering food to someone for $8, a $5 tip, praying for it, and you're like, what the heck did I do? You know, and there's a lot of ego shedding in there, but I think you need it.
Ego
some people
death, right?
Yeah.
It's I watched a little interview he took with Mike Tyson on his hotboxing thing, and he was talking about ego death of going to those places to try and kill it. And it's one of the things I've been thinking about when you're confident and you're raw and all the rest of it. You know, that's probably that same thing we talked about before. The asset that can get you there could potentially be a liability out of it. How do you then fight or do it? And obviously Tyson's 53 maybe now. You're 43, I'm 35, so sort of stages of it. But even just the awareness that that's a thing because those things which can be the biggest assets are probably 20 times more dangerous as a liability, so navigating that. And Mason was saying the same thing, where he went from then he, top of the world X Games, yada, yada, yada. And then, he was applying for a job just as a checkout operator at Whole Foods. And he was stoked because he was getting his, $12 an hour, but then he was getting, recognized from the crash reel, people coming up like, yo, why are you in South Carolina or some shit? Like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, funny story that. It's like, oh, geez, it's an emotional journey for it too, right?
Dude, it's horrible. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? Like, but I think I give Mason credit for that too, because like, I don't know, it's the ego of us is like, dude, that's horrible. I think, but it's like anyone that I would respect and people that I have respect. That's why I have this lens. Is dude, you got your ass handed to you, but you're like you're diving back in and figuring it out. Like, yeah, you could have made some smarter decisions, but like I respect that you're gonna humble yourself to go do that. Like. It is what it is.
How could any relationships that are existing that people won't answer your call, you feel like it feels like, from this conversation at least anyway, like you're mentally and emotionally in a different space. Like what can you do to try and mend those bridges as well? You're obviously doing it with your family. You're trying to do it with your friends. Like what can or can't you do? Is it context? Is it,
You can't do anything when someone won't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Like text message, phone call, anything. I mean, the ego that still needs dying for a while, I would just like text once a month just to like kind of have the laughter of like knowing that like you can't even get a humor text. And then I had to let that subside because that's just ego driven anyway. But no, there's just, and this is like, again, talking to people, some people just, when they close someone off, they close them off. That's their style. I'm not saying it's bad or anything. Just,
yeah,
we're all different.
You've done your piece for it. And so quick little random pivot, jumping and tweaking around in the CBD game.
Yeah.
So talk about that for a second. Like it is like New Zealand's got a referendum this year to basically vote to potentially legalize in New Zealand. People are sort of setting up for it. Here, a bunch of the states that are sort of rolling around are bringing a whole bunch of additional tax revenue in. It's becoming a lot more mainstream. I walked into my first store thing in San Francisco and checked it out. I was like, this is surreal. It's like a McDonald's for weed. Like, what's going on here? Why weed and the industry of weed? Because it's clearly the narrative's changing extremely quickly about it.
Yeah. No, I back to kind of like everything just kind of falling into place. So, as I'm delivering food, trying to think about what I want to do next, you're like trying to think, trying to architect, trying to reverse engineer, figure stuff out. But when I was in Austin, and so I went to Austin completely like done. But I would take Klonopin to panic attack. I would take Adderall to like reverse the panic attack. So I was like pulling my brain in both directions. and high doses. I learned later, but you can't get it in Texas. Like you just can't get it. So eventually I ran out and like Googling like what happens when you come off of Klonopin. It's like do not do it on your own. And I'm like, anyways, through that process, I started taking CBD to try and like help my mind because I was basically doing drink tasting for this CBD company. Like like going to like Costco and they like a sample.
Okay.
So I was doing that for this CBD company at like gas stations. And as I'm standing there, completely just lifeless, I would be doing the samples myself. And I'm like, wow, this stuff actually kind of works. So it was just, I was exposed to it through that sort of an example. And, but like, I was hooked and I was like, this stuff's amazing. It's healthy. And I haven't had a panic attack where before, if I got off of my Klonopin on vacation, I would have like a panic attack. Like that's how just gnarly it was. And then when I came back here, a friend called me up, like, hey, I'm doing a CBD company. And I was like, are you kidding? Like the stuff just saved me. And kind of like awesome culture and just kind of like fell into it. Right. And then you get to see, and they're all about each one of the founders, their family, like had cancer or had a gnarly skin and tons of operations and seeing CBD, how it changed their lives. And, the rest is, I guess, the beginning. But very natural, being open.
How big do you think the market's, how do you think CBD is going to play out for the rest of America and then globally as an industry for the next 5 years?
My lens is that it's like water, meaning like it'll be in everything. If you actually just drink water and don't drink anything else, you'll be a pretty healthy, amazing human. If they can give people, the benefits are just there's too many benefits. Even like the oil, like the snake oil salesmen, like if they're even using crappy product, it'll get people results. So I think the way I look at it is the reason I'm doing it besides this company and my side project is it's super low barrier to entry to get in, but that makes it super competitive. Right. So I think that'll all get bought up by big companies, big pharma as everything kind of changes because it is kind of like we'll have CBD in everything. It'll be like a flavor, right? Kind of like everything is like energy plus or like, supplement plus. And I just think it'll be in there. For me, I look at it as it's like a sticker. Friends have started as a sticker company. It's a vehicle to encapsulate a bunch of ideals and philosophies and lessons that will spawn off into other products. But I think it'll eventually just get sucked into like as an ingredient in everything. So I don't think it'll be sold outside of maybe some like really high end private label stuff. It'll get sucked into the big companies.
So it will essentially become almost a base ingredient of, human 2.0, but what will eventually happen, I'm imagining is, I don't know if it's happened already, but, do the Coca-Cola start buying them up? Do the tobacco companies start buying them up? Do they put them into, does Amazon get its own sort of white label, its own thing rolling? Like how does,
all the above.
You feel it will get to that stage, but it'll get to there?
All the above. I mean, you can buy it, even if you're private labeling, you can buy a bottle for $5 and sell it for how good's your sales message? 50, 60, right? Like the margins are ridiculous. Like I can go order some offline if I don't really care about like certain things. But I can go get pretty good stuff and I can pay $5 and have it here in 2 weeks and sell it. Like we had to fly to Asia, develop something for a year, spend $100,000 in mold tooling. Then when it came PO time, we had to put half of it down. Then we had to, like, it's just like, and it was like 45 points margin. This is like 90.
So yeah, is it a brand? So so when it gets, when it says it's easy access to market, everyone's going to pop up and have their own sort of things. Do you think it's going to come down to a quality and brand game? Or do you think it's going to come down to small niche, bespoke, like craft beer type things? Like, so if you're in New Zealand looking at the world market, like how do you see it playing out in terms of what brands will win? Does this become a Coca-Cola game or does this become a niche, bespoke Tesla?
I think it's a mixture of both, meaning like you're going to have the big guys suck up the mass amounts, like alcohol, and then you have the craft beers or you have the coffee shops vibe. Because there is like the way I'm approaching it is very like frequency driven, like the actual intentionality that you put into the essence. So it's not like, yes, I take this because I want sleep. I also take this because I know that my lack of sleep is caused by inflammation, but also just by like stories in my head and like belief systems and like other energetic levels. So like, I think there's like our angle is more energy work type vibe fused into it. I think there's probably other elements like that too, where that's not going to be Coca-Cola. So I think that there's those offshoots, but I think as everything is changing and just the value of companies being in lists and in customers, it'd be really hard for companies just to refrain from offloading it, right? Like it's like Pure Canna, that was this guy Cody Alt did it like a year and a half. He sold it for 90 million, and then he's got another one. You know, it's just I think there's too much money there for big guys not to buy it all up.
Yeah,
and then
so and they'll like so it'll be the role. It'll be the next will be the the early explorers come around, figure out what's going to pop, then the big dudes roll come with their engines and their infrastructure and the scalability and all the rest of it, and then basically corporate will come to the weed town probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I already think it's there, and I think COVID as an example, like all that's happened for companies investing in innovation and R&D and all that sort of stuff. Like there's shareholders and stockholders are going to need something where I think in the next 18 months, they'll be buying up a ton of companies. So anyone in the wellness space, which is massive now, there's like an opportunity here to like, hey, grow something, innovate, like own a market, and then have someone probably buy it up. Who knows?
Done and dusted. This has been awesome chatting with you, man. Obviously, we've been connected through Snowboard World in and out for many a year, and it's just cool to reconnect back up and sort of find out what happened at Vegas a couple of years ago that it was not going well, but now we know what happened.
I think what happened was that was where Friends was already gone. The new owners had it. It was a really not rad transition. So yeah, that was probably like, and I was still in lawsuits and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it probably wasn't, like I said, it wasn't going well.
Yeah, and I just was really sort of taken aback because no one tells the truth when you actually ask them what's up. Everyone's like, yeah, good. And it's like, no, how's it going? It's like, and you're just like, not good. Oh man, it was awesome. Hey, I really appreciate it, brother, and congrats on all the successes. Probably the full loop back too, to be able to be at a spot to reset in a way for round two with lots of learnings for onwards and upwards, man. And what a journey and a time for you to hit that apex of the talent and the time within that world for a pretty awesome space to give you the experiences that you had.
Nah, man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to
ask
questions. So much respect for what you're doing. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, brother. I'll talk to you soon, bro. And if I make my way down to San Diego, we'll catch up for round two. It'll be great.
Yeah, that'd be rad.
Awesome, brother. All right, man. Talk soon. Later, bro. Bye. What a champion. That was pretty good. What a journey. Jingle bells. What a flipping journey. Keir, Dillon, World Superpipe champ, X Games, all the rest of it. Been around the world, done a whole bunch, and transitioned back to go for round two at life. For those who aren't aware, the Friends headphones was a huge part of the action sports world, coming up against Skull Candy. Skull Candy was valued at 500 million. These crew came up, and obviously, as you heard, 10 owners in the mix. When you've got ego and money, and there's politics and a crazy wide world, and then going from an action sports company into a women's fashion line is one thing. Navigating the world of houses and just, geez, flipping journey. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll be looking to do more like this of things that I'm really interested to learn about as well. And so we'll see. Dave Recorn says, thanks, Robett. Love meeting Keir back in 0405 and following his journey. Yep, shot. That was, there you go, Dave. Give you a bit of props here. Legend. Good dude. Shot, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day and see you all soon. Peace.